For quite a while I had the idea to make a video such as this, and more recently I aim to publish something similar on October 11th, the coming out day observed in some countries. But a recent event convinced me not to wait any longer. I am non-binary, which means I am neither a man nor a woman, but something else. On May 7th in 2013, the Bundestag, the German lower house of parliament, decided to reintroduce a third gender entry for the public registries. This new law came into effect after a very long delay on November 1st, 2013. Exactly 1 month later, I applied to have the gender entry of mine corrected. What followed was an ordeal of constant fighting against discrimination and prejudice of the people working for the local authorities and offices. The approval of such an application could be done with a few mouse clicks, and by law had to be done. But then it took more than 5 years, up to January 2019, including more than 2 years in court against the administrations of both my hometown of Mainz and my birthplace Worms, for the final resolve that the wrong gender entry was corrected. The only way this was possible was by reporting the constantly sexual discriminating judges to the police. Also, for now more than 10 years, I have been a political activist, and especially I campaigned for human and civil rights. I became a member of the city council in 2014 and served for a period of 5 years. Also, I participated in a lawsuit against sexual discrimination on ballot papers introduced by the then coalition of the Social Democratic Party of Germany and the Greens at the Constitutional Court of my home state. Of course, this discrimination was declared unconstitutional and a violation of human rights. In my life, I was always discriminated against. For the longest time by my parents, who repeatedly sent me to psychiatrists in order to heal my identity. Of course, doing something like this is completely illegal to the point of it actually being a crime. But though the discrimination I experienced did certainly start with my parents, it didn't end there. Especially public officers constantly discriminated against my identity, intentionally of course, since they were obliged to follow the law to the letter. Some people working for these offices went as far as threatening me with physical violence and even attempted to break into my apartment on a couple of occasions. For the most part, there was people of the local social welfare office who always showed the utmost hate against every person that was neither a woman nor a man. Of course, I reported them to the police frequently, but their hatred never ceased. I do not receive social welfare, even though I need it, solely because these people are only willing to give money to men or women. Also, I don't have access to health insurances, bank accounts, phone contracts and more. Even my internet access runs on the name of a friend. One other office that was very intense in its intolerance was the so-called Ordnungsamt. I think the closest equivalent to this in the United States would be a sheriff's department. Frequently I reported personnel of this office to the police, especially their leader, who never lost an opportunity to discriminate against non-binary people. Which led to what happened last Sunday, September 20th, 2020. I was sleeping a bit late and got awoken by a banging at my front door, so loud that I immediately thought someone was trying to bash into the safety glass. There were actually 2 members of this Ordnungsamt who repeatedly yelled "Herr Dorn." The German word Herr means Mr., and by law it is of course only legal to call male people like this. This alone already qualified as a crime, but it didn't stop there. In my political work I often received threats from police officers, and I always tried to de-escalate the situation by calmly talking to these people and explaining what the situation is. In most cases I had success with this approach, so I tried once more, put some street clothes on and stepped out of my door. But as I did, I was immediately grabbed and pulled away from the door, which I could barely close behind me. Without ever listening to me, I was dragged away from my apartment and brought before 2 members of the police who, despite seeing this, did nothing to intervene or help me. Instead, the police officers left the scene, while I was pushed forward to the car of the Ordnungsamt, where I was pushed against the chassis, had to empty all my pockets, was strip searched with a special firm painful grips in my crotch, and was finally put in handcuffs before shoving me onto the backseat of the car. These people didn't even obey to traffic regulations and ran over a stop sign on their way. Not once did I resist to any of this, and I still tried to de-escalate by explaining what my identity means. The reaction I got was the sentence, "We have more pepper spray," which translates into, "We also have pepper spray." Just like my parents did in my childhood and youth, these people brought me to a psychiatrist, or in this particular case it was the psychiatry of the local university hospital, basically a lunatic asylum. There as well, I was told by a doctor that I was brought there due to my identity, which was described as a mental illness of which I had to be cured. A few hours later I received pretty much the same speak, again by a judge from a local court, who started off with the sentence, "Mein Name ist Richter," which literally means "my name is judge." This judge condemned me to stay in this asylum up to October 5th, without access to hygiene products or spare clothes. But I was promised that people I nominated were to be contacted and informed about my captivity. This promise was never kept, and for the entire time I was held captive, I was denied access to a telephone. After a change of shifts the next morning, I was able to convince someone of the personnel of the hospital to at least allow me to send a single fax. And this I wrote to a member of the city council I knew well from my own time there, and bid this person to contact even more members of the city council. As was to be expected, the personnel of the hospital read my text and realized that I personally knew a few people of influence in local politics. About an hour later, I was released, thanks to this fact alone, and was able to return home after about 22 hours in captivity, without a trial. But of course, this begs the question, how many more political activists campaigning for human and civil rights are still being kept against their will in institutions like this, who don't know people of influence as their jail-free card? This is still the bare daily reality for LGBTIQ activists here in Germany.